My wife cheated on me and abandoned our daughters. Years later, she comes back with another man's son so that we can start a family. Some context here, my ex-wife, Angela, 36 and I, 37, met when we were about 25. I was about 24. We were working at the same company. And that's how we met after being in a relationship for 2 years. We got married, and within 3 years of our marriage, we had 2 daughters, now 9 and 7. The second pregnancy was unexpected and she wasn't happy about it, but she didn't break it off, even though I had told her it would be okay if she did, as I didn't want to put her through something she didn't want. After our first daughter, things were still great between us, and we were as in love as we could be, but that changed after the second pregnancy. She became really moody and irritable and was constantly criticizing me or to our oldest daughter. But I just thought this was because of all the hormones like that, and tried to make peace with this new version of Angela. We thought this would change after a while. But things just got progressively worse, and my daughter and I learned to walk on eggshells around her. I was taking care of everything even though she was supposed to be a stay-at-home mom. She quit her job of her own free will after our first daughter and did all the work around the house. In addition to taking care of our oldest daughter while I worked when she got pregnant for the second time, we had to hire a housekeeper because she said she was too tired to do the work around the house. In addition to taking care of our daughters. Even though it was a little out of our budget, I agreed. Since I wasn't making enough at the time, I agreed to hire a housekeeper because I didn't want to inconvenience Angela, especially while she was pregnant. I figured would take care of the house and the girls during the day after our second daughter was born too. Let me make it clear that I was not one of those husbands who did nothing around the house after I came back from work. I did everything I could to help. Although I used to be exhausted from working after she gave birth to our youngest daughter, I thought it would take a few months. But then she would recover, and we could go back to our normal life. But several months passed, and she showed no signs of change. She was still the same moody and irritable and refused to do any work around the house. She would just stay home all day watching TV. She didn't even play with the girls or anything, and she would pay our neighbor to take them to the park every now and then. I don't want to sound resentful, but I felt that way because I was working day and night and she didn't even do the bare minimum at home too. It was getting quite expensive for me to pay a housekeeper to do all the cooking, cleaning, and other household chores. I also had to take care of all the other expenses, and I wanted to save money for our daughter's future as well. That was becoming almost impossible because Angela refused to help me in any way. So after almost 6 months since the birth of our youngest daughter, I decided that we couldn't continue like this, and I had to talk to Angela. I knew this was going to be a difficult discussion, so I asked my parents to take care of our daughters for a day, and they agreed that day. I sat Angela down and told her that I knew she was tired after 2 pregnancies, but I needed her to help me here and work with me. I explained to her that having a maid was getting too expensive for us, and I needed her to keep her word and go back to doing at least some of the household chores so we could renegotiate and reduce the maid's salary, which would allow us to save some money. She objected to the idea and rejected it instantly because she said she was too busy taking care of the girls to do any work around the house, and that I should earn more instead of making excuses and blaming her for my financial situation. I tried to tell her that I was already doing my best, but that she also had to do her best if we wanted to make this marriage work too. I mentioned how I was not really taking care of the girls, because as far as I knew, I would just let them watch TV with her, and they would sit with her for hours while she watched tacky reality TV shows. This is what the maid had once mentioned to me in a conversation. I soon realized that mentioning it was a huge mistake, because she flew into a rage and accused me of spying on her through the maid. After that, she launched into a tirade against me and said that she was not going to put up with this anymore, that she was done being manipulated by me and being forced to do all the work while I didn't do anything but sit at a desk for a while. As hours a day, she then told me that this was my fault, that I couldn't afford to have a housekeeper, and that it was a shame that I had to beg her to help me since I was supposed to be the man of the house. Everything was really illogical, and she was just grasping at anything to try to make it seem like there was nothing wrong with her for doing nothing all day, and that I was the crazy one for expecting her to actually contribute and do her part around the house. We ended up in a giant fight, and she called me a loser, that I couldn't afford to be with a woman like her anyway, And I responded by calling her the lazy cow that I had already failed at being a good mother, given the way our oldest daughter was scared of her. And now I was failing at being a wife too. That comment really took her up on it, and she pushed me hard. I lost my balance and fell backwards onto the coffee table, very hard, making the glass shattered and hurting me. I had to be rushed to the hospital, and she kept apologizing to me and crying the whole time. Luckily, I only hurt my back, and they were superficial injuries. But I could have been seriously hurt, and I didn't trust Angela anymore. I told her she had to move because I didn't trust her around the kids, as there was no telling when she might lose control with them and end up. She begged me to give her a chance, and at the end of the week we came to the conclusion that she was going to go live with her parents for a while and undergo therapy. Only when a medical professional deemed her fit would I allow her to come back to live with us. Obviously, there was something very wrong with her because happy people don't act that way, but she was willing to work on it and get better. Plus, I didn't want my daughters to grow up without their mother, so I agreed not to divorce her at that time and give our marriage another chance too. We were getting couples therapy while living apart. But eventually it all turned out to be useless because she ended up cheating on me. My parents had moved in with me to help with my daughters. While Angela was living with her parents, we went to couples therapy sessions weekly, and things seemed to be getting better for a while too. I was in touch with her therapist, who told me that she had been suffering from postpartum depression but was getting better. One of her symptoms had been anger issues, which she didn't have before, but they got out of control when she pushed me, and that was a wake-up call for both of us. This continued for almost a year, and around the 6th month, I even let her visit our daughters under my supervision. I was slowly getting back to how it was before, and I was glad to see that I finally felt like our situation was getting better, and that we could really make it work. But then she suddenly stopped coming to our therapy sessions without any explanation. She also stopped responding to me. But I knew I was making progress because her therapist kept me informed. It didn't make sense to me, and for weeks I kept trying to talk to her, but she would just ignore me and say that she wanted some time to herself. Finally, after almost 3 months of avoiding me, I decided to visit her at her parents' house. I hadn't done it before because her parents didn't want me and blamed me because they thought I was the one who had driven their daughter crazy and made her act like that. So she had told me that it would be better if I didn't visit her while she lived with them, as that would only lead to a lot of love, and definitely that was the last thing we needed. But I broke that rule and visited them anyway, since she had been acting distant and avoiding therapy sessions, and even when she did show up, she occasionally seemed disinterested. And I just couldn't figure it out when I tried to talk to her in person on the phone or even text. She would tell me everything was fine, but I could tell by her behavior she was definitely hiding something from me the day I got to her parents' house. I expected her to be home, but she wasn't there. When I asked her parents where she was, they told me they weren't allowed to tell me, and they shut the door in my face. I could tell they were enjoying this, and I had a bad feeling about it. So I decided to call Angela while I was standing in front of her parents' house. I tried calling her several times, but she didn't pick up, and every second that passed, I got more and more paranoid. So I decided to snoop around the house and get in somehow on my own. I went to the backyard because I knew her parents usually kept the kitchen door open, but I didn't even need to go that far, because I saw Angela sitting on the swing that her parents had in the backyard. The bad news was that she was sitting with her back to me because she was making out with a man that I did not recognize. It has been a long time since I saw you, but it is etched in my brain because it was the most horrible moment of my life, and I have not been able to forget it even today. The guy she was making out with backed away as soon as he saw me, and when Angela turned around, I had already started to walk back to my car. She caught up to me and tried to stop me, but I wasn't listening to anything I was saying because I was in shock. She tried to grab me, but I pushed her away and told her not to touch me. So she didn't, and I went back to my car and started driving back home. I blocked her everywhere as soon as I got home so she wouldn't have a chance to explain herself, and I told my parents I wanted them to find a lawyer for me and informed them of what I just witnessed. When I visited Angela's parents' house, I didn't see or hear from her until we had to meet with the court-appointed mediator to the settlement of our divorce. By then had practically turned me into a robot and was only working for the sake of my daughters, but it had shut me down emotionally. I didn't feel anything. Even when I found out that Angela was giving up her parental rights because she had decided that she didn't want to be with us anymore, then she wanted to be with the guy. Let's call him already. The one I had seen her with. the other day. He was a childhood friend of hers, and although they had grown apart after she finished high school, they had reconnected when she moved back in with her parents, and apparently had fallen in love with him. Her parents were also supportive of this, which probably explains why they didn't want to tell me anything. That day, apparently they had always wanted her to end up with June, and were happy that Angela was finally choosing herself and her own happiness, as if she had ever been capable of doing anything other than that. The divorce was a long process because although I had been cheating yet, I wanted to qualify for alimony. It took us a while, but my attorney and I fought hard to make sure that I didn't get anything in the divorce, because everything was rightfully mine since I had been the one paying for everything for so long, while she did nothing but watch TV at home. It's been 5 years since the divorce was finally settled, and we achieved our goal of making sure she walked away empty-handed. The months I was dealing with the divorce were some of the hardest times for me, but I knew I couldn't give up, because I had to take care of my daughters since they had no one but me. My parents were obviously very helpful and supportive, and I can never thank them enough for being there for me while balancing work and taking care of my daughters. It's been 5 years since then, and although at the time divorce seemed like the worst thing that could happen, I'm thankful for it now because I don't think I would have been in the place I am today. If it wasn't for my decision to leave Angela, life has really treated me well since then, and I am in a much better place now in every aspect. Since then, we have moved to a bigger house because I make better money now, and I don't have to spend money on anyone besides me and my daughters. My parents live nearby and come over from time to time. I also have friends who love me, and my daughters are as happy as can be. That is all a man needs, and I am so grateful to the universe that everything is going well for me now. Or it was until Angela showed up again. A few days ago, the girls were at school, and I was about to leave for work. When I opened the door, Angela was standing outside with a boy at her side. The boy couldn't have been more than 3 or 4 years old, and I knew this had to be Angela's son. I was shocked to see the stand outside my door. I was still trying to process it when she started crying, and said that she was here to apologize and fix things with me. She told me that she was finally ready to be a family again and give our marriage another chance. I couldn't believe that she was back here after all these years, and now I wanted to give our marriage another chance, as if she was the one to make that decision in an instant. I made a decision and decided to close the door and turn her away, because I didn't want to let her in, whatever this was. But before that, I told her that this was no longer her family. I stopped being her husband the day she cheated on me with Jan. The divorce was just a legal obligation, and she herself gave up custody of her daughters, so now she had no right to refer to us as her family, after saying that I closed the door and told her to go away, because I didn't want her to be anywhere on my property. 2, I could have thrown her curses because I was really angry, but I refrained from doing it for the child. I could hear her crying outside my door for a couple of minutes after closing it, but I decided to ignore it, and once I secured my house. But as soon as I got home from work, I got a call from my parents demanding an explanation on why I had rejected her. They told me that Angela had contacted them after I rejected her and slammed the door in her face, and she was devastated. My parents said that they were the ones who gave her my new address and told her to visit me, as she was in the process of divorcing Jan, and finally had a chance to work things out with me. They told me that Angela had contacted them about a month ago, and this had been in the works for quite some time. My parents believed it was time for me to think about my daughters because my daughters needed a mother, so they decided that she deserved another chance and told her where to find me and what to tell me. I got angry a lot with them because it was not their place to forgive her and decide to give her another chance without even asking me if I would be okay with it. Could have been really bad if the girls had been home, and it was really reckless of them to do something like that. So I told them what I thought, but they refused to acknowledge that they had made a mistake because they had helped me throughout my divorce by babysitting the girls. And even now, they occasionally babysit the girls. They believed that whether I wanted to reconcile with Angela or not was my business, and that they had the same right to decide what was best for the girls, and I couldn't take that away from them. I thought it was ridiculous that they believed that, because at the end of the day, they were my kids and not theirs. Although I respected that, and would always be grateful for what they did for me during my divorce, I don't think it was their place to let Angela back into my life. We had a fight, but they told me that I was the one out of place here, and was being selfish in not giving Angela another chance. They told me they had done their due diligence, and were sure she was now a different woman, and deserved to be a part of my daughters' lives, even when I reminded them I had given up my rights. They said it was insulting that I believed they would endanger my daughters or me, and accused me of ruining their lives by being too arrogant to accept that they needed their mother. It's been a few days now, and I don't think I was inappropriate or selfish because I have thought about this a lot. I stand by my decision to not give my ex-wife a second chance to be a mother. Update 1. It's been about a week since Angela showed up at my door with her son, and I recently found out the truth about her relationship with my parents. It's honestly so disturbing. I don't even know where to start, and I'm still struggling to process it myself. It's amazing how all of them they betrayed without blinking an eye. Apparently, it was not only them who gave her my new address, but they were also in contact with her the whole time I had cut her out of my life after the divorce, but they didn't do it because they thought she would come back at some point. They didn't talk much, just once a month maybe, but that was enough for me to feel betrayed. Yahoo made Angela give up her rights after she was served with divorce papers and gave her an ultimatum. Either she abandoned her family and made a new life with him, or kept in touch with her daughters and fought for their custody. But that would mean leaving him behind was a difficult choice for her, according to my parents. But she ended up going with Yahoo to start a new family with him, instead of staying with the family. She already had. My parents said that Angela contacted them shortly after I filed for divorce to tell them about her situation and ask them for help, because she wanted to stay in touch with her daughters privately. She told them that she was between a rock and a hard place on both sides. She would not be able to see her daughters either way, because I was fighting for full custody with supervised visitation rights, while Yahoo had ordered her to abandon her daughters completely. Even if she fought for custody, the chances of her getting partial custody were slim, given the circumstances of our divorce and her history of temper control issues. So fighting for custody seemed to be a waste of time and resources to her. There was a very real possibility that she could lose as much as even custody of our daughters if she decided to fight in the end. And that is before my parents intervened. They met with her privately, and she practically begged them to allow her to stay in touch with her daughters, and asked them to act as a bridge between them. She was aware that once they would give up his rights, he would have no visitation rights, much less supervision. But my parents would have them, and they planned to exploit that. And they did it successfully, and they deceived me. They went behind my back for years to allow Angela to meet our daughters. They did it because Angela's situation moved them, and they realized that they could not in good conscience stand by a mother of their daughters stabbing her own son in the back for years. However, it did not affect them at all. They told me that every time I dropped our daughters off at their house, they would invite Angela over and let her spend time with them. My daughters never told me that they met their mother because my parents bribe her with toys and candy to keep her. Silence. About this, every time I asked them what they had done at their grandparents' house, my daughters would tell me that they played with my grandparents and their friend. I always assumed that they must be talking about my parents' real friends whom I already knew, but apparently that is what my parents had told my daughters. Daughters. To refer to their mother in case I asked them about their day, I couldn't believe that my daughters had been lying to me too, but I forgave them because they are just kids, and also because Angela and my parents had really manipulated and bullied them into silence, after I learned the truth from my parents. When I asked my daughters if they had been meeting their mother behind my back, they started crying and told me that they couldn't tell me because they would be punished by God if they did. Angela and my parents had really drilled it into their heads that there would be serious consequences if they told me the truth. And that was why they had been so secretive and vague all the time. I also felt like a terrible parent for never asking my daughters what friends of my parents were spending time with them, because it could easily have been someone else, someone more dangerous than Angela, and I would never have found out. But I'm going to put an end to this now. Same as I am, getting a restraining order against all of them. I already have written proof of this, as my parents emailed me to tell me the truth. A couple of days after my fight with them, they believed the email would make me realize how desperate Angela was to continue being a mother to her daughters, without losing the supposed love of her life, and somehow that would make me forgive everyone involved. But all it did was make me realize that everyone here was a disgusting liar, and I couldn't trust anyone else. It's also ironic how Angela gave up her parental rights and had to resort to meeting our daughters in secret, like it was a crime, all because she still didn't want me to have any contact with her former family, and he was supposedly her true love, but now they are divorced, and all that turned out to be in vain. They even had a child together. But according to my parents, he had already an hour ago wanted nothing to do with her or her son, because he had received a job offer and was moving out in a couple of months. Angela had recently started working again, and her son had started kindergarten here. So she did not want to move with him, which was why they had been fighting for a long time. Finally, it all came to a head 3 months ago, when Jan told him that they were done, and that he was taking that job and moving out. He had no interest in being a family man, because it clearly meant that he would have to sacrifice his own future and happiness just to make her happy, and he was not willing to do that. All of this was meant to make me feel sorry for Angela, but the only purpose it served was to make me feel like justice had finally been served. I have already spoken to my attorney, and the petition for the restraining orders was filed my daughters, and I have also had a proper discussion about all of this, and I have told them that from now on, we will never. They will see their grandparents or their mother again, and they seem to be okay with that for now. But we will still go to therapy and try to figure things out, because I am sure this will be hard for them, and it has probably been pretty hard for them over the last 5 years, but this is all over. Now update 2. Hi everyone. Thank you so much for all the concern and support. I am really thankful that so many people have been sending lovely messages and blessings for my daughters. My parents and Angela have been served with restraining orders, and are supposed to appear in court in a few days. I don't know how they feel about it because I have blocked them on every platform possible, and I have also told my friends not to talk to them in case they contact them. I have also increased security around my house, and I have been working from home for a couple of days. I spoke to the authorities at my daughter's school, and they have told them. I told them about the situation initially. I did not intend to let them go to school for a few days, but I didn't want their education to suffer because of Angela and my parents. So now the teachers have to keep an eye on them. I pick them up after school. I'm doing everything I can to make sure they can't contact us because I'm sure they will try. So far, everything has gone well, and I hope after we get that restraining order, they continue to stay away. Update 3. Hi, everyone, this will be a short update, but we managed to get that restraining order. And for the next 5 years, the 3 maniacs will have to keep their distance from me and my daughters, unless they want to face dire consequences. I will obviously continue to keep all the safety measures I took for a while, because last time I saw them, they seemed really angry, and I don't want to take any risks. My daughters and I are attending regular family counseling sessions, and I think we are going to make a lot of progress in the next few months done. We have already made considerable progress. Honestly, all I want now is for my daughters to be happy, and that is all. So please keep sending us your best wishes. We need you updates to you. Unfortunately, I have to share an unpleasant situation that occurred recently. This time my mother and Angela showed up at my house unannounced. I was completely off guard when I opened the door after they knocked, and I found them standing there. Angela started screaming and demanded to talk to me. While my mother was back with a defiant expression, I immediately decided to stay calm and tried to calm the situation. I asked them to leave, explaining that it was not the time or place to talk. In addition to that, they had a restraining order and could not be in that place. But Angela flatly refused and continued screaming. Accusing me of separating her family and depriving her of her daughters, the situation became increasingly tense, and I realized that there was no way to reason with them at that moment. Seeing that the situation was getting worse, I decided to send my daughters to their room to protect them from the argument. I told them to stay there until I told them. Meanwhile, I tried to keep Angela and my mother as far away from them as possible. The argument went on for a while with accusations and shouting everywhere. I finally managed to convince them to leave, but not before making it clear that I did not want to see them again on my property, or I would call the police. I was thinking of doing it at that moment, but I did not want to traumatize my daughters any further. I hope to meet with my lawyer soon and discuss what options we have after they left. I went to comfort my daughters and explain to them what had happened in the calmest way possible. It was a difficult time for all of us, but I hope we can get through it together. Angela's son would not be there if it had not worsened. What saddens me the most is that this poor child lives with that kind of mother, which must not be easy at all.